In 1942, a spy tried to steal the American secret that would decide World War II, but he discovered something disturbing. The true power wasn't in the blueprints, it was in the rhythm. This is the story of the factory that produced a bomber every hour and changed the fate of the world. August 6th, 3:47 a.m., Willow Run, Michigan. The temperature reads 27 degrees. The noise is deafening. Pneumatic hammers beat like a giant heart. Industrial lamps tremble over the steel. If you blink, you miss a bomber being born. Otto Rainer walks among the machines. He's a technician on the B shift, but he's also a Nazi German spy. His objective? Copy the plans for the B-24 Liberator. His watch reads 3:52. He pretends to yawn, but his eyes scan every detail. Every secret dies when there's too much noise, he thinks. The assembly line stretches 3.5 kilometers. It never stops. At each workstation, pairs of hands repeat gestures with military precision. Thomas Beckett, the chief engineer, walks with a clipboard at his hip. He times everything. Every second counts. Otto discreetly notes, engine assembly cycle, 52 minutes and 18 seconds. Nominal torque, 1,350 pound-feet at 2,700 RPM. Radial weight, 1,060 kilograms. Clearance check, 0.012 inches. War tolerance. Women in red headscarves push parts carts. Welders move in rehearsed choreography. Sweat stings the eyes. Pride doesn't cool. Beckett presses the mechanic's stethoscope to the block. The engine vibrates. He notes 0.3% variation in the torque line. Too statistical to be chance. At 4 a.m., a siren sounds. 7 men push the gleaming engine. The button is pressed. The engine roars like a storm. An operator smiles. One more for the Pacific. Otto swallows hard. He realizes something terrible. He can steal the design, but never the method. And whoever masters the method masters the war. The factory covers an entire city. 5 miles of corridors, 3.5 million square feet. White light falls on shadowless faces. Willow Run isn't just a factory, it's a living organism that breathes steel and spits out planes. At 5:12 a.m., a timid orange appears in the skylights. The heat comes from the machines. Smells of kerosene, grease, and coffee battle in the air. Internal rails guide carts like veins in a body. The data is brutal. Capacity for 300 bombers per month, war goal, 27 critical operations per aircraft, maximum stock of 48 hours, rework rate 2.1% and falling. Henry Ford watches from afar. The old industrialist hated war, but the assembly line defeated philosophy. The factory stretched its arms until it touched national strategy. Capitalism turned into ammunition. Trains arrive at 5 a.m., spitting out workers. A young man carries his lunchbox and dreams of returning for Christmas. A woman adjusts her gloves and thinks about rent. Another kisses a folded photo in his pocket. The clock throws them all into the same hour. Otto notes, the engine of war is human. He looks for holes in the method, finds redundancies, looks for unsupervised spots, finds a mirror. The line looks back. Data flows like machine gun fire. B-24 maximum takeoff weight, 29 tons. Range, 3,400 kilometers with load. Cruise speed, 290 miles per hour. Bomb capacity, up to 3,600 kilograms. Each number pushes the war farther away. Thomas Beckett times everything. He maps where the body airs and where the hand tires. Swaps tool positions. The minute surrenders. Efficiency saves lives I don't know, he murmurs. A riveter laughs loudly. The voice vanishes in the hammer. A veteran trembles at the smell of solvent. A rookie learns the difference between firm and brute. Otto learns something else. American engineering has no arrogance. It has process, and process is invincible.
Thomas Beckett's watch isn't just a wristband. It's dogma. It's a metronome. It's an invisible hammer striking every station at once. 6 a.m. on the dot. Temperature, stable at 28 degrees. Humidity, 46%. The decision is made. 1 second less here is one more living pilot there. Beckett walks with the step of an inspector, presses the stethoscope to the block, listens not to sound but to pattern, identifies false notes like a conductor. Sees minimal oscillation in the torque noise. Notes, 0.2% variation. Probable origin in the fourth island. Already sketches the countermeasure. Every 30 steps he drops a datum. Engine takt time, 50 minutes and 42 seconds. Target, a 48. Buffer for critical parts, 120 minutes. Unplanned downtime index, 1.7%. Each number arms the board where the enemy is entropy. Beckett believes in three gods: sequence, tolerance, and redundancy. Sequence prevents error epidemics. Tolerance is the language between iron and hand. Redundancy is the parachute everyone pretends not to see. He operates as if the air were graph paper. Shifts a cart 20 centimeters. Saves 20 seconds per cycle. Reallocates a supervisor to the cowling. Cuts the invisible queue. The statistics smile with steel teeth. On the glass board, he traces the spine of the line. 27 critical operations. 11 inspection points. 4 historical bottlenecks. 2 sabotage risk points. In the margin, the phrase "no one dares a race." Rhythm is safety. A new operator over tightens. The thread grinds. Beckett grabs the arm calmly. Force isn't firmness. Takes the torque wrench, marks 75 pound-feet, shows the right motion. The young man repeats and smiles. Otto watches Beckett, underestimates him. He looks for caped heroes, finds second counters. Notes, obsessive boss. Doesn't understand that obsession is the civilian name for technical victory. In his journal, Beckett records, average cycle reduced by 76 seconds. American engineering doesn't win by bravery, it wins by cadence. But something's wrong. The tolerances shouldn't vary like that. Someone is tampering with the numbers. Margaret Donnelly wears leather gloves and a red bandana, breathes acetone and hot metal, positions the rivet, braces her body, feels the vibration rise up her arm. The final click has a beauty that doesn't appear in posters. The rivet gun sings at 90 psi, 1,200 impacts per minute. Tool weight, 3.6 kilograms. She masters the dance. Brace, fire, release. Her shoulders ache, but pride pushes. The steel responds with a full note. Margaret doesn't read espionage. She reads people. Notices who avoids eyes, who switches hands without reason, who arrives too hurried for a shift that suffers no delays. Her head assembles a puzzle of gestures. The data supports the scene. 30% female workforce, 18,000 active riveters, tolerance window on the B-24 skin, 0.032 inches, liquid penetrant inspection every 150 panels, a yield mural no one dares cheat. She learns to read aluminum like skin, subtle difference between firm and brute, listens when the sound betrays an oval hole, knows that haste manufactures cracks, mentally notes where haste became method. Because where haste becomes method, someone changed the metronome. A too friendly colleague offers help, easy smile, gaze that doesn't fix. Margaret steps back, thanks and refuses, presses the gauge to the panel. Reads 0.501 inches, where there should be 0.500. Small difference, big signal. Her heart beats like a piston. She takes the suspicion to Beckett. He listens without interrupting, asks for blind repetition of the measurements, orders discrete swapping of gauges between sections. In 24 hours, the map of deviations draws a clear trail to the culprit. On break, Margaret drinks lukewarm coffee, reads the note on the board, voluntary extra shift, sees the trick, more tired eyes, more chances for camouflaged error, decides to stay. Staying is the verb of vigilance. Data falls like pins. Average installation time, 7 minutes and 12 seconds. Acceptable scrap, 1.2%. Residual vibration, 0.03 G. Margaret discovers something. The enemy isn't a monster. It's a shortcut. And shortcut in war is a dead end.
The sound of the B-24 taxiing is tamed thunder. Each step on the tarmac vibrates in the stomach. 7:42 a.m. Cold wind blows from the north. Carries the smell of castor oil. The fuselage reflects the sun. The noise is half machine, half faith. Henry Ford watches from the porch, face furrowed like one who prefers car to cannon.
But economy defeated philosophy. Government defeated resistance. The line that manufactured freedom now manufactures fire. The old man feels he lost purity. The Pratt & Whitney engine roars. 1,200 horses and 4 propellers, 2,700 rotations per minute. An engineer notes vibration at 0.02 G. Efficiency hits 98.3%. Perfection has no pause. The turbine sound is the metronome of victory. The thesis draws itself. Industrial pacifism surrendered to total war. Economy became strategy. Engineering replaced politics. No more civilian cars. There are combat vehicles. No more assembly lines. There are battle corridors. Beckett watches the bomber climb, sees in the aluminum reflection the faces of the workers. Each bolt was tightened with hope and guilt. Feels the symbolic weight of an artifact that carries the fate of 1,000 men. Data falls like bullets. 18,500 B-24s produced. Average cost of $300,000. The price of 50 houses. Autonomy of 3,400 kilometers. Load capacity, 3,600 kilograms of bombs. Each number seems a prayer without a saint. Margaret watches the plane climb, imagines how many will return alive, feels pride and fear, bitter mix of all industrialized war. Fear smells of kerosene, pride tastes of sweat and aluminum. In the control room, Otto notes discreetly, times durations, measures distances, draws the pressure diagram from memory, sends it all in simple code. The American victory is being copied line by line, but he doesn't know yet, copying without soul. Henry Ford writes in his diary, "The factory is a mirror of the spirit, and the spirit today is too noisy." Closes the notebook, orders the lines expanded. Neutrality is a luxury for those who don't produce. The fire starts small, a spark in a trash bin. 2:37 a.m. Ambient temperature, 31 degrees. In 3 minutes, the aluminum glows orange. Alarms cut the air like a blade. The floor trembles. The factory breathes in desperation. Margaret is the first to see the flames, runs between sparks and smoke, activates the CO2 valve. The noise is of a suffocated dragon. The smell mixes burned plastic and grease. Time folds. 1 minute seems an entire shift. The siren echoes to the fields. Beckett arrives running, shirt stuck to his body, eyes wide. The stopwatch falls from his hand. The glass shatters. He shouts orders with a firm and trembling voice. The engine section is consumed by the fire. 14 units lost. 2 months of work evaporated. Data sprouts amid the smoke. Estimated loss of $2 million. Loss of 14 engines from batch 72. Safety failure in 1.1% of thermal sensors. Each number is a stab in the pride of precision. The FBI arrives in silence, men in hats and stone eyes. They note everything, photograph, ask more than they answer. One of them, Kessler, observes the floor. This isn't an accident. This is design. The air cuts. Beckett, soaked in sweat and ash, notices something that chills him. A tool dropped on the ground, marked different from all. European steel, irregular finish, a file mark that doesn't belong to the line. The ghost of sabotage gains a face. Margaret, coughing, watches the flames, feels fear trickle down her throat, thinks that the war arrived there, in the middle of America, hidden in overalls and badges, decides she won't let fear defeat curiosity. Otto watches with dry eyes, realizes the fire destroyed not just metal, but cover, any chance of secrecy. He writes in his pocket, "Accidents are poor proofs." The smoke erases fingerprints. When the fire stops, Beckett walks through the debris. Among ashes finds a hand-filed bolt, pockets it. The engine of war just changed tone. The noise of the machines never stops, but after the fire, the sound seems heavier, as if each hammer blow carried guilt. 5:15 a.m. The conveyors start turning again. The heat still licks the floor. The air smells of rust and silence. Beckett observes the faces, sees distrust settle like emotional rust. Everyone watches everyone. Every movement gains shadow. Every gaze lasts 1 second too long. The factory that breathed in unison now breathes in broken measures. The FBI sets up an improvised office. Kessler circulates with calculated step and clipboard in hand. Notes names, entry times, tool routes. Speaks little, prefers to listen to the noise of fear. Margaret senses the mood, keeps working. The rivet gun sound is drier now. Each shot seems a shortened gunshot. She transforms tension into focus. She's the first to notice the same errors repeat at identical times, as if someone marked sabotages on the clock.
The thesis reinforces. Spying is knowing the enemy's rhythm. The true secret of modern war is to measure, predict, infiltrate, and repeat. The factory floor is the new battlefield. Every human gesture is a coordinate. Data arrives with military precision. 22 federal agents assigned. 15 confirmed sabotage cases in neighboring factories. 7 espionage reports on the East Coast. Everything seems part of a much larger board. Kessler interviews workers, asks about schedules, shifts, friendships. While noting a statement, his eyes meet Beckett's. For a second, the engineer feels something off. A pause too light, a note too short. Instinct starts writing a mental report. Margaret talks to colleagues at lunch, hears different stories about the fire. One speaks of electrical short, another of forgotten cigarette, another of poorly cooled weld. Each version has a detail that doesn't match. The noise of lies echoes louder than the machines. Reiner feigns normalcy, but his hand trembles holding the pencil. At 10 p.m., Beckett finds an improvised listening device hidden in the electrical panel. Technology too amateur for a professional. More than one game is in play. The night falls dense. 1:13 a.m. Otto Reiner writes hurriedly, small notes in code. His heart beats out of rhythm. He knows the noose has tightened. Every second now is a nail in the coffin of a secret. He packs microfilms inside steel bearings, covers them with grease, numbers them manually. Each piece is a package of information destined for the obware. The plan is simple. Hide knowledge inside the product itself. Send the enemy to the front with a copy of their own power. Beckett, on the other side of the line, examines torque records, notices repeated anomalies, the same deviated values emerging at fixed times, sees the error is intentional and systematic, not human failure, mechanical signature. The idea chills him. Margaret notices Reiner's constant presence in restricted areas. He always helps with off-shift repairs, but never gets his hands dirty. She decides to follow him discreetly, finds him noting measurements on blue paper, the same used for inspection reports. A trace of nervousness gives the game away. The thesis takes shape like molded steel. The American secret isn't the weapon, it's the method. And the method, once deciphered, changes the course of the war, because the engine can be copied, but the cadence, never. Data emerges from shadows. 12,000 microfilms intercepted on Swedish ships in 1943. Encrypted correspondence traced to the German consulate in New York. Reports confirming sabotage in components destined for the Pacific. Kessler watches everything with excessive calm, the kind of calm that deceives. When Beckett questions him about incomplete reports, he responds with evasions. The engineer begins to understand. The enemy might wear a federal badge. Margaret intercepts a note left on Reiner's bench, sequence of letters and numbers, seemingly random, but they hide the pattern of sabotaged parts. Delivers it to Beckett. He finally sees the full trail, a line of espionage stitched into the assembly line. Reiner realizes he's been discovered, accelerates the final plan, decides to destroy evidence before the FBI acts. At 2:47 a.m., the last microfilm is prepared. A shadow moves behind him. The sound of a camera shutter cuts the silence, like a trigger pulled. Beckett's office looks like a bunker. 4:16 a.m., cold neon light, graph paper sheets covering the walls, chalkboard taken over by numbers, air thick with burnt coffee. The distant sound of the line echoes like a memory. The engineer finally understands. War has many fronts, and the most dangerous is the invisible one. With compass and ruler, he traces the map of failures, each point a sabotaged engine, each line an attempt to hide the pattern. When he connects it all, the drawing reveals a circle, a signature camouflaged in chaos, a symmetry so perfect it can only be intentional. The technical datum appears like an arrow, 0.3% repetitive failures, torque deviated in 15 consecutive units, 21 falsified records by the same control code. The pattern repeats every 7 hours, timed with orchestral precision. Margaret arrives with tired eyes, cold coffee cup, observes the board, understands without words. There's method in the destruction, engineering in the betrayal. The weight of knowing is almost physical, like carrying a lead piece in the chest. Beckett breathes deeply,
Takes the stethoscope, goes to the line, presses it to the newly assembled engine, hears perfect sound, right rhythm, but feels the emptiness between beats, the silence between notes. Realizes the enemy learned to counterfeit the sound of efficiency itself. The thesis echoes. Technical reasoning defeats ideology. Truth isn't in the flags, it's in the measurements. War is mathematics disguised as heroism. Data flows like liquid lead. Nominal torque of 1,350 pound-feet. Minimum variation of 0.2. Residual vibration of 0.03 G. Average bench temperature at 312 Kelvin. Beckett notes it all without blinking. Each number is a moral bullet fired against doubt. Margaret watches his face harden, sees the man who once believed in perfect rhythm begin to doubt his own method. Feels that the war, even distant, already won inside the factory because it destroyed faith. Beckett decides to act, creates a tracking code only he understands, discreetly changes the line rhythms, alters torque and rotation times to generate controlled error. A trap. Tomorrow the machine will sing the thief's name. The day dawns with the smell of rain. 7:03 a.m., low clouds, aluminum reflections on the wet floor. Beckett reviews the reports, realizes something absurd. The adulterated data didn't come from the line. It came from the Federal Inspection Team itself. Kessler enters the room as if nothing happened. Clean suit, voice too calm. Beckett feels the ice rise up his spine. The silence is long enough to become proof. The agent's gaze is so neutral, it seems a mirror. Margaret appears at the door, with an envelope she found on the wrong desk. Inside, copies of reports sent to a New York address, signed with Obver code. Her hand trembles, but her voice comes out firm. He was never on our side. Kessler doesn't deny, just smiles, removes his hat, cleans his glasses with a white handkerchief. I didn't betray my country. I tested it, and it failed. The phrase falls like a bomb. Beckett realizes the enemy he pursued was, in truth, the gatekeeper. The thesis crystallizes like ice on metal. When security becomes obsession, the enemy has already won, and loyalty becomes a statistic, cold and disposable. Data emerges from the files. Obver interception codes deciphered by Operation Venona. 4 American agents infiltrated in key factories. 12 sabotages with direct links to German intelligence. Kessler's name appears in half the reports. Beckett feels the ground give way, because everything he believed was protected was built on distrust. Understands that what keeps the engine running isn't steel, it's faith in what one does. And when it breaks, the sound of the line changes tone. Kessler tries to justify, speaks of balance, vigilance as control. But Beckett listens no more, just notes the cold data. Transmission times, names, schedules. Turns betrayal into calculation, because that's what he knows how to do, measure the enemy with precision. Margaret watches in silence, eyes moist. Thinks that maybe war never really ends. It just changes form. Uniform. Logo. Kessler is taken away. Sound of boots echoing like piston beats. Beckett returns to the board. Draws a thick line over the name. Writes, internal noise is what most damages the engine.
The fire returns, but now in memory. Margaret smells smoke every time she closes her eyes, as if the air still carries the echo of fear. 2:45 a.m. Rainy dawn. The ceiling drips. The floor reflects red emergency lights. The factory seems to cry with her. She holds in her hands the report she saved from the fire, the proofs of Kessler and Reiner's involvement. The paper is burned at the edges, text blurred by water, but the words survive, like those who can't forget survive. She decides to hide the document in a compartment of the main panel.
The FBI orders partial evacuation of the engine wing. Beckett protests, says every stopped minute is one less bomb in the air. Margaret, exhausted, stares at him. Every hurried minute is a downed plane. The phrase silences the engineer. For the first time, time seems the enemy. In the midst of chaos, a crane drops a load of tools. The noise is deafening. Dust rises. Beckett runs. Margaret throws herself aside, feels the blow of a part hit her leg, screams, but doesn't stop, crawls to the panel, pushes the compartment. The report is safe. Data mixes with human urgency. 42 deaths from industrial sabotage in 1943, loss of 17 aircraft from non-combat failures, 63 simultaneous open investigations, and among these numbers, Margaret, a woman no one would notice, holds the secret that will change everything. Reiner tries to escape through the fuel tank corridor. Beckett pursues him between shadows and extinguisher sounds. "You destroyed what you built," he shouts. Reiner replies with a cutting voice, "I just proved that even perfection bleeds." The confrontation is quick, unequal fight between faith and calculation. Margaret hears the sound of punches, metal snap, sudden silence. Time breaks. Beckett emerges covered in soot, sweating, lost gaze, says only, "It's over." But the silence denies it. Wind invades through the broken window, scatters ashes on the floor. Margaret leans on a wheel wrench to stand. Beckett helps. The sound from outside is of real planes flying over Michigan, fruits of their work crossing the sky. Margaret smiles in pain. Their noise is our prayer. The clock reads 3:22 a.m. The dawn is cut by headlights. Agents surround the main building. The FBI launches the final operation to dismantle the network. Kessler's is already arrested, Reiner wounded. Beckett, in the middle, must ensure the line doesn't stop. It's the order he himself wrote. Neither war nor fear stops production. The factory is now a labyrinth of shadows and echoes. Every step sounds like a march. Margaret, on crutches, insists on staying. "I don't want to see the line die without me." Beckett hesitates, but knows no one else knows the electrical system like her. Allows it, with a heavy gaze of guilt. The agents position themselves. A discreet siren sounds, the signal. Reiner, hidden, activates the final plan. Chemical detonator linked to fuel drums. The click sound is almost inaudible. But Beckett, accustomed to hearing anomalies, notices. "Stop the conveyors," he shouts. Too late. The fire is born from the floor like swallowed thunder. Lights flicker. The ceiling groans. Margaret runs to the panel, starts cutting power manually. The heat is unbearable. Reiner appears, marked face. Says, "You killed the invention with fear." She replies, "No, we saved it from you." Beckett faces the enemy in a game of precision. No shots, just seconds. He tricks Reiner by saying the plans were already sent. The spy hesitates. Instinct betrays him. In that instant, the agents advance, capture him. The technical lie defeats the human trick. Data reigns amid the chaos. Line stopped for 17 minutes. Estimated loss of $100,000. 1,400 liters of fuel burned. 0 fatalities. The most important number, 48 bombers readied the following week. The factory resists. Margaret collapses to the floor, exhausted. Beckett kneels beside her. She laughs, even wounded. "So, we keep the right hour." He holds her hand. "Yes, Miss Donnelly. The clock didn't stop." The FBI collects the evidence. Smoke rises. Dawn breaks weak but firm. Beckett walks to the line, touches the cold metal.
The war ended here, but the sound remained. He turns on the panel. The hum returns, weak, then growing. When the test engine spins again, Margaret hears it even unconscious. The sun rises heavy over Willow Run. 6:02 a.m. The smoke from the fire still dances in the air. The sound of the conveyors returns timidly, as if the floor were testing its own courage. The factory is wounded, but alive. Beckett walks among debris and silent workers, the firm gaze of one who carries a cross of metal and responsibility. The floor is still hot. The cranes resume movement. At each island there are trembling hands, red eyes, exhausted hearts, but no one retreats. The motto on the mural is rewritten in charcoal: 1 bomber per hour, no excuses. And for the first time, the rhythm seems more human than mechanical. Margaret arrives limping, leaning on an improvised crutch, red scarf still on her head. The men stop. A dense silence traverses the hangar. She climbs onto a crate, shouts. They didn't burn the line, they just tested it. The applause comes timid, then grows like a rekindled engine. Technical data emerges amid the collapse. Production resumed in 14 hours, 89% yield in the first shift. Average torque stabilized at 1,352 pound-feet. Vibration reduced by 0.01 G. Efficiency, like pride, rises again. The numbers now sound like metric applause. Beckett watches and understands something he didn't learn in books. The machines aren't the heart of the factory. The people are. And it's precisely the error, the unforeseen, and the fear that make the line continue, because only what feels resists fire. The FBI dismantles the bugs, removes the evidence, closes reports. No newspaper publishes what happened. The case is silenced before it's born. Beckett signs non-disclosure terms. Knows he'll never tell this story. Margaret smiles. Better that way. Those who need to know are already here. At 4 p.m., the first new bomber is tested. The engine sound is pure, stable, no deviation. Beckett listens and closes his eyes. The noise is identical to prayers in motion. An operator writes on the fuselage side with grease. Born of fire, powered by steel and stubbornness. The plane takes off amid restrained applause. Final data: 1 bomber per hour. Absolute record. Error margin 0.08%. Sabotages after the incident, 0. At the end of the shift, Margaret looks at the horizon. Tomorrow, it all starts again. The year is 1945. Washington. Dark concrete rooms. Slow fans. The Willow operation folders are stamped in black ink. Confidential, War Department. Beckett signs the last page with a trembling hand. The case is officially forgotten. The reports describe everything with scientific precision: industrial espionage, sabotage, infiltration. None mention civilian names, nor Margaret's sacrifice. The text is cold as steel, the kind of truth history prefers to hide. Kessler is imprisoned at Fort Leavenworth, sentenced to 20 years. Otto Reiner disappeared before the war's end. Rumors say he was recruited by another power. Beckett reads this in a telegram, smiles bitterly. Enemies change flags, not methods.
Margaret receives an anonymous letter with a single phrase: "You prevented the war from reaching your street." No signature, no official seal. She keeps the paper in the drawer with the red bandana, folded like a memory of fire that no longer burns, but also doesn't fade. Post-war data: 18,482 B-24 bombers produced, over 1.2 million workers involved, $1.4 billion invested in defense contracts. One confirmed sabotage case after 1944, none at Willow Run. Efficiency became national doctrine. Beckett leaves Ford a month later. The engineer who timed the war doesn't want to time peace, buys a clock without hands, hangs it on the home wall. If I don't know what time it is,
I can't delay history, he says, with a half-smile. The FBI archives the operation files under a 50-year seal. The reports sleep in metallic silence. The country celebrates victory. The factory continues producing engines, now civilian. The sound is the same, but the purpose changed. Margaret returns to her ordinary life. No one knows what she did. When asked about the war, she replies only, "I riveted planes," and smiles, like one who guards a secret bigger than she can tell. Beckett visits her one last time before leaving. They walk the deactivated line. The floor still stained with grease and glory. He says, "We did it, but no one will know." She replies, "That's how those who don't need medals win." When he leaves, Willow Run appears from above, the sleeping factory. Sun reflected on abandoned aluminum, the sound of the machines, now distant echo, seems to whisper, "Steel forgets," but the sound remains. A file is declassified at the State Department. A young historian opens a dust-covered folder, reads the name Operation Willow. The pages exhale mold and secret. In them, the final report. Industrial espionage activity neutralized at Ford Motor Company facilities, 1942-1944. What was shadow now becomes document. The photos show faces without captions. Beckett bent over clipboards, Margaret smiling with grease on her hands. Nameless agents. In the background, the assembly lines that shone like columns of fire. The historian notes, "These people won the war without fighting on the front." He doesn't know how literal that phrase is. The technical report impresses more than the photos. Maximum production. 1 B-24 bomber every 63 minutes. Total of 18,482 units. 8 million components assembled. 42,500 workers. 30% women. No fatal accidents after 1943. Each number pulses like the heartbeat of a nation that learned to fight with stopwatches. The thesis roars again. Industrial logic defeated tactical brilliance. No general would have won without the noise of factories, without the sweat of hands that tightened rivets instead of triggers. The enemy lost not for lack of courage, but for not understanding the rhythm of production. Margaret now lives in Detroit, mechanics teacher. Rarely mentions the past. When asked about Willow Run, replies, "It was big enough to hold the world." At night sometimes, she dreams of the sound of the machines and wakes smiling. Beckett died in 1959, sitting before the handless clock. In his last entry he noted, "There are no innocent gears." In 1960, part of Willow Run's technology is transferred to space programs. The engine that carried bombs will now carry satellites. Gunpowder grew wings. Steel learned to aim for the stars. The impact is invisible, but permanent. Factories became the new battlefield, and whoever mastered the tempo mastered the century. The engine of war never stopped. It just changed fuel and keeps roaring.